In the sleepy town of Ravenswood, nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, there stood an eerie mansion known as Blackwood House. The house had been abandoned for decades, its grandeur and beauty slowly being consumed by the passing of time. The townsfolk avoided the place, whispering tales of curses and unexplained occurrences that made even the bravest souls shiver. The story began on a dark and stormy night, when a group of friends, all in their early 20s, decided to explore the long-abandoned mansion. They had heard the rumors, but they didn't believe them. They were convinced that Blackwood House was just a myth, a legend born from the imagination of bored townspeople. As they approached the house, the wind howled and the trees creaked ominously. The group hesitated, but their curiosity got the better of them. They pushed open the creaking front door and stepped inside. At first, everything seemed quiet and still, but as they ventured deeper into the house, they began to notice strange noises, creaks and groans that seemed to come from nowhere. They tried to brush it off as old house settling, but deep down, they knew something was off. The group decided to split up to explore different floors and rooms. Emily, a history buff, wandered upstairs to search for any clues about the house's past. She stumbled upon a dusty old diary belonging to a young girl named Elizabeth Blackwood, who had lived in the house with her family in the late 1800s. As Emily read through the diary, she discovered that Elizabeth had grown up in a world of darkness and fear. Her father, Malcolm Blackwood, was a cruel and abusive man who ruled his family with an iron fist. Elizabeth's mother was kind and loving, but she was powerless against her husband's wrath. One night, Elizabeth's mother disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Elizabeth was devastated and felt like her whole world had been turned upside down. She began to experience strange and terrifying occurrences, doors slamming, shutting on their own, disembodied voices whispering her name, and ghostly apparitions flitting around the edges of her vision. As Emily read on, she realized that Elizabeth's experiences were eerily similar to what was happening in their own lives. They had all felt an unsettling presence since entering the house, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. Suddenly, Emily heard a faint whispering in her ear. "Get out, while you still can." She spun around, but there was no one there. She tried to shake off the feeling of dread and continued reading, but it was too late. The group had already begun to experience more intense paranormal activity. Doors slammed shut, objects moved on their own, and disembodied voices grew louder and more menacing. It became clear that Blackwood House was not just haunted, it was a portal to a realm beyond their wildest nightmares. One by one, the group members began to vanish. At first, they thought it was just a prank or a trick of the mind, but as they searched for each other, they realized that something sinister was at play. Emily was left alone in the house, surrounded by darkness and terror. She stumbled upon a hidden room deep in the basement, a room filled with ancient artifacts and mysterious symbols etched into the walls. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror with an inscription etched into its surface: Malcolm's Lair. Emily felt an icy chill run down her spine as she realized that she had stumbled into Malcolm Blackwood's lair, a place where he had conducted dark rituals and made pacts with malevolent forces. As she turned to leave, Emily saw her own reflection in the mirror, but it wasn't alone. A figure loomed behind her, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. It was Malcolm Blackwood himself, or rather, his vengeful spirit. Emily tried to run, but it was too late. The mirror shattered into shards of glass as Malcolm's spirit reached out to claim her soul. The last thing she heard was Elizabeth's whispered warning. Get out while you still can. When authorities found Emily's car parked outside Blackwood's house days later, it was empty except for her diary, open to Elizabeth's final entry. Father's gone now. I am trapped here forever. The townsfolk say that on certain nights, when the moon is full, you can still hear Emily's screams echoing through the halls of Blackwood House, trapped forever in Malcolm's lair, alongside Elizabeth's restless spirit. Some say that if you dare to venture near Blackwood House at midnight, you'll hear your own name whispered back at you. Get out while you still can. Deep in the heart of the Louisiana Bayou, there was a place known as Dead Man's Hill. It was a spot where the living were said to be unwelcome, and the dead roamed free. The locals avoided it, whispering tales of curses and unexplained occurrences that made even the bravest souls shiver. But I had always been drawn to the unknown, and Dead Man's Hill seemed like the ultimate challenge. I gathered a group of friends, all thrill seekers like myself, and we set out to explore the infamous hill. As we approached the hill, the air grew thick with an eerie mist. The trees seemed to lean in, as if listening to our every conversation. We exchanged nervous glances, but our excitement won out. We had to see what lay beyond the mist. The hill was steep and treacherous, but we pushed on, our flashlights casting a otherworldly glow. The wind howled, and the trees creaked ominously, making it seem like we were being watched by unseen eyes. As we reached the top, we stumbled upon an old, weathered grave marker. The name Jean Laveau was etched into the stone, surrounded by strange symbols and markings. We didn't know much about Laveau, but rumors whispered that he was a voodoo priest who had made a pact with the devil himself. Suddenly, our flashlights flickered and died. We were plunged into darkness, surrounded by an unsettling silence. We fumbled for our phones, but they had no signal. We were completely cut off from the world. A chill ran down my spine as I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. My friends were scattered around me, their faces pale with fear. That's when we heard it. A low, mournful cry that sent shivers down our spines. It was a sound that seemed to come from all directions at once, growing louder and more intense. We tried to run, but our feet felt heavy and unresponsive. It was as if someone was holding us back. The cry grew louder still, until it became a deafening scream that shook the very foundations of the hill. And then, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the ground, my head throbbing with pain. My friends were scattered around me, their eyes wide with terror. As I sat up, I saw that we were not alone. A figure stood before us, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. It was Jean Laveau himself, or rather his spirit. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as he spoke in a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "You should not have come here." As we tried to flee, Laveau raised his hand and pointed at us. The ground began to shake and tremble, and we felt ourselves being pulled back towards him. It was as if we were being drawn into some dark abyss from which there was no escape. One by one, my friends vanished into thin air. I was left alone, facing Laveau's wrath. He reached out and touched my forehead, and everything went black once more. When I came to again, I was lying in my own bed at home. It was morning, sunlight streaming through my window, and my alarm clock blaring in my ear. But something was different. I felt changed. As I looked around my room, I saw things that couldn't be explained. Shadowy figures lurking in the corners of my vision, whispers in my ear when no one was around, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw Jean Laveau's face staring back at me, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I knew that Dead Man's Hill had left its mark on me, a mark that would haunt me for the rest of my days. The town folks say that if you ever venture near Dead Man's Hill at midnight, you'll hear Jean Laveau's mournful cry echoing across the bayou, a warning to stay away from his domain forevermore. But I know better now. Dead Man's Hill is not just a place of death. It's a portal to a realm where the living are not welcome, and once you enter its gates, there is no escape. Professor Emma Taylor, a renowned archaeologist, had spent her entire career searching for the lost city of Zerzura. Legend had it that Zerzura was an ancient city hidden deep in the Egyptian desert, filled with treasures and secrets beyond imagination. Emma was determined to be the first to find it. She assembled a team of experts, her colleague Dr. Ryan Jenkins, an expert in ancient languages, Dr. Sophia Patel, a geologist, and 2 graduate students, Alex and Maya. Together, they set out on their expedition into the scorching desert. As they ventured deeper into the desert, the team encountered numerous challenges: treacherous sandstorms, treacherous terrain, and even equipment failures. But Emma was undeterred, driven by her obsession to uncover Zerzura's secrets. After weeks of searching, they stumbled upon an ancient temple hidden beneath the sand. The air was thick with an eerie energy as they explored the temple's labyrinth corridors. Emma's excitement grew as she deciphered the ancient hieroglyphics, revealing a hidden entrance to Zerzura. As they descended into the lost city, they were struck by its grandeur. Towering structures, carved symbols and murals loomed before them. The team began to explore, taking samples and notes as they delved deeper into the city. But as night began to fall, strange occurrences started to happen. Equipment would malfunction or disappear, and strange noises echoed through the corridors of their camp. The team tried to brush it off as mere superstition, but Emma couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. One by one, the team members began to vanish. At first, Emma thought it was just a prank or a mistake, but as more people disappeared, she realized that something sinister was at play. She was left alone, surrounded by an endless expanse of sand and darkness. As she frantically searched for her team members, Emma stumbled upon an ancient ritualistic chamber deep within Zerzura. The walls were adorned with symbols of dark magic, and a series of ancient artifacts lay scattered across the floor. Suddenly, Emma heard a voice, a low, raspy whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. "You should not have come here." The voice grew louder, more menacing, until Emma felt herself being pulled towards the center of the room. As she looked down, she saw that her hands were covered in dark sand, and her eyes felt heavy with some sort of unknown energy. She tried to run, but her legs felt heavy and unresponsive. The last thing Emma saw was Sophia's face, her eyes black as coal, as she whispered, "I'm sorry," before disappearing into thin air. When authorities found Emma's expedition, months later, they were met with an eerie sight. Emma's diary lay open on a stone pedestal, surrounded by ancient artifacts and symbols of dark magic. The words, "I am cursed," were sprawled across the final page in blood-red ink. Some say that if you venture too close to Zerzura's ruins at midnight, you'll hear Emma's desperate cries echoing through the desert, a warning to those who would dare to disturb the secrets of the lost city. Others claim that on certain nights, when the moon is full and the stars align just right, you can still see Emma's ghostly figure wandering the streets of Zerzura, forever trapped in her quest for discovery. But I know better. Zur is not just a lost city. It's a portal to a realm where curses are real and sanity is the illusion. Dr. Sarah Lee, a renowned psychologist, had spent her career studying the effects of isolation on the human mind. She had conducted numerous experiments on prisoners, solitary confinement, and even space travelers. But her latest experiment would push the limits of human endurance further than ever before. Sarah had designed an experiment to simulate a year-long isolation period for a group of 8 volunteers. They would be placed in a specially designed facility, cut off from the outside world, with no contact or communication with the outside world whatsoever. The goal was to study how the human mind would adapt to such extreme isolation. The participants were a diverse group, ranging from students to professionals, all eager to participate in this groundbreaking study. Emma was confident that this experiment would revolutionize the field of psychology. The facility was designed to be self-sustaining, with a fully equipped laboratory, living quarters, and even a small garden. The participants would have everything they needed to survive an entire year without ever leaving the facility. The experiment began on a crisp autumn morning. Sarah led the participants through the facility, explaining the rules and protocols. They were instructed to keep a daily journal, documenting their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. At first, everything seemed normal. The participants settled into their routines, exploring their new surroundings and adjusting to their new lives. But as the days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to happen. Weird writings and pictures began to appear on the wall. Participants would hear strange noises or whispers in their ears when no one was around. Some began to experience vivid hallucinations or nightmares. Sarah was concerned, but remained optimistic. She attributed the occurrences to the natural effects of isolation and reassured the participants that it was all part of the experiment. However, as time went on, things took a darker turn. Participants began to act strangely, becoming paranoid and even aggressive towards each other. Some started to exhibit signs of mental breakdowns and psychosis. Sarah was horrified as she watched her experiment spiral out of control. She tried to intervene, but it was too late. One by one, the participants began to vanish. At first, Sarah thought they had simply escaped or been injured, but as she searched the facility, she realized that something sinister was at play. She found evidence of violent struggles and cryptic messages scrawled on the walls. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered that one of her own colleagues had been hiding a dark secret. He had been manipulating the experiment from the beginning, using his knowledge of psychology against the participants. Sarah knew she had to escape before it was too late. She made her way back to the office, determined to expose the truth and stop her colleague's twisted game. But as she reached her office door, she found it locked and barricaded from the inside. The words, "You'll never leave," were scrawled on the door in red ink. Sarah's screams were drowned out by the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The authorities found Sarah's body weeks later, her eyes frozen in terror, surrounded by these cryptic messages and evidence of a dark ritual performed within the facility's depths. The facility was sealed off forever, but whispers spread that on certain nights, when the moon is full and the stars are all aligned, you can still hear Sarah's screams echoing through those deserted halls, a chilling reminder that some secrets are better left unexplored. Detective Jameson had always been fascinated by the supernatural. As a child, he would spend hours listening to his grandfather's tales of ghostly encounters and unexplained phenomena. So when he stumbled upon an ancient mirror in the depths of an abandoned mansion, he couldn't resist the urge to take it home. The mirror was old and worn, with a dark, mysterious aura surrounding it. Jameson felt an inexplicable connection to it, as if it was calling to him. He hung it in his office, where it seemed to absorb the light around it, casting an eerie glow. As the days passed, strange things began to happen. Jameson would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of his eye, only to turn and find no one there. He would hear whispers in his ear when no one was around, and at night he would wake up to find the mirror reflecting an image that wasn't his own. At first, Jameson dismissed the occurrences as mere paranoia, but as they continued, he began to feel like he was losing his grip on reality. He started to avoid the mirror, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it was pulling him in. One night, Jameson woke up to find the mirror reflecting an image that made his blood run cold. It was a face he had never seen before, a face with sunken eyes and a twisted grin. The face began to change, its features morphing into those of his dead grandfather. Jameson tried to scream, but his voice was frozen in his throat. The face began to laugh, and the mirror seemed to ripple like water. Suddenly, Jameson was sucked into its depths. When Jameson came to, he found himself in a dark, damp place. He stumbled through the darkness, calling out for help, but there was no response. As he walked, the air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to thicken. Jameson stumbled upon a door with a sign that read "Welcome Home." He pushed it open and found himself in a room filled with mirrors. In each mirror, he saw different versions of himself, versions that were twisted and distorted. They all seemed to be staring back at him, their eyes black as coal. Jameson realized that he had entered a realm where mirrors were portals to other dimensions, and he was trapped. The mirrors began to close in on him, their reflections merging into a single image, the face of his grandfather. The face spoke in a voice that echoed in Jameson's mind. "You shouldn't have left me alone." Jameson's screams were drowned out by the sound of shattering glass. The mirrors disappeared, leaving behind only darkness and an endless expanse of nothingness. The next morning, Jameson's body was found in his office, surrounded by shattered glass and broken mirrors. The only clue was a small note left on his desk. "I'm still here."